Aloha und herzlich willkommen zu Triathlon Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Triathlon Podcast. Today in English, obviously, and my guest comes from New Zealand, and she's not a triathlete, I would say, but she comes from a pretty interesting sport, and so therefore I invited her into the podcast in order to learn more about her sport. But because from my perspective there are quite a lot similarities. Welcome, Kayla Imrie, or Kayla Tyrell.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Is it Tyrell or Tyrell?
Tyrell. Yeah,
Tyrell.
Tyrell.
Okay. I'm super happy to have you here because I don't know if I may say this, but we are neighbors, and we had a chat from a couple of times ago, and I learned from that you have a pretty interesting story. Also, when I prepared for this interview, I made a kind of research. A little one. And I learned that you went to the Olympics because some of the triathlon pros I had here on the show, they were also taking part in the Olympics. And it's always great to learn how people are experiencing the Olympics from a different angle and different sport. But before we hop into that topic, let's introduce you. I mean, we know your name, but where are you from? How did you grow up? Were you sporty when you were a child?
Yeah. So I'm from New Zealand. I grew up in the capital of New Zealand, Wellington, which, I mean, if you've ever looked into kayak, it's not necessarily the best place to get outside and jump on the water. It's extremely windy.
Yeah.
So they have a few harbours down there, but they are generally quite there's a lot of waves, a lot of chop. So it's not the easiest sport to get into down there.
Sure.
So when I was young, I actually was heavily involved with swimming. So I was a swimmer pretty much from the age of 5 till I was 18.
Wow.
I was a competitive swimmer, and in New Zealand, sports are very seasonal. Swimming was an all year round sport, but in the winter I would play a game called netball. It's very similar to handball, I guess, over here in Europe. And then in the summer, I kind of didn't have another sport to do. So when I got to around 13 years old, my parents decided to try and get me and my 2 brothers, I have 2 younger brothers, involved in a sport called surf lifesaving. So that's when you have surf lifeguards on the beach, protecting all the swimmers on the water.
Right.
But those surf lifeguards over the summer period also get involved in surf sports. So they have these boards where they go out and race each other in the ocean. And they also have surf skis, which are very similar to kayaks. So my parents tried to get me to join this surf lifesaving, and I was kind of a teenage girl at that time, and I was like, my swimming, I'm swimming, twice a day, 6 days a week. Sundays was my only day to hang out with my friends, and that was the day surf training was on. So I was like, no, I don't want to join surf lifesaving. So my brothers joined anyway, and one summer in the weekend, I had nothing to do on a Sunday, and all my friends were out of town, and I was bored, so they were heading up to surf training, and I was like, okay, you know what, I'll come up and I'll lie on the beach and get my tan on, like a typical teenage girl. And so I was on the beach while my brothers were out doing surf training. They were on these boards, they're kind of like surfboards. Anyway, one of the coaches came up to me and just handed me a surfboard and was like, look, you can take this out into the water and have some fun, do what you want with it. Anyway, I got this board and I went out into the water, and for the life of me, I could not stay on this thing. I would lie on my stomach and flip straight off straight away. And I don't know if it was just my stubbornness that got the best of me, but it ground me that I could see my 2 younger brothers out in the water catching these waves, doing all of these skills on this board, and I couldn't even lie on it on the flat water. So I came back every Sunday from then on until I could handle this surfboard.
Cool.
And then once I finally managed to sit on the surfboard and kneel on it and catch waves, they gave me a surf ski, which is like a kayak. And that's kind of how I got into paddling generally.
All right.
So long story short, I ended up joining Surf Lifesaving.
Cool.
And it finishes at the end of summer. So I had nothing to do in the winter again. So I was like, all right, and what can I do that's similar to surf in the winter? And that's how I got into kayak.
Wow. You mentioned briefly that you were swimming 2 times a day, 6 times a week.
Yeah. So we would swim before school. In the morning, we'd be up at 5:30 in the morning, get to the pool.
Wow.
Pool's open at 6, start squad training with all the other kids before their school as well. You'd finish around 7:30. You'd get out of the water, so an hour and a half of swimming. Get dressed, get changed, have your breakfast at the pool, and get to school by 8:30.
That's dedication, yeah.
Same again after school.
It takes a lot of dedication to continue swimming on a training level like you did for a while. You did this for how many years?
I did it from I was 5 to 18. Yeah.
At the age of 5, 2 times a day? No.
Yeah. Oh, not when I was that young. Definitely
Okay.
not that long. But once I was at like high school, for sure I was doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, twice a day.
With a certain aim? Like, I want to compete on a national or international level, or?
I didn't necessarily have aims for like competing on the levels. It was more like I wanted to reach certain times for, events for my swimming. So I was generally a backstroker and freestyler. So it was like, trying to crack under a minute for 100 meters freestyle. That's kind of the goals that I would have had when I was a swimmer.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, it's a great sport in general for the whole body, yeah, when you grow up. Because I got also by accident into swimming when I was young. And I did this until age of 20. But from time to time, I had struggles in order to motivate myself because it takes some time to make progress. And sometimes you hit a kind of plateau. And then sometimes it goes the other way, that the times are not improving. And on the other hand, you see like classmates hanging out during the weekend, having parties all night long. And you are feeling, oh, what the heck am I doing here in the pool? Yeah. Did you have the same feelings when you were in your puberty phase, maybe teenage?
Yeah, I think definitely the one thing with swimming compared to all of the other sports that I did was you're in your own head the whole time. When you're training, you are face down underwater, you can't hear anybody, you can't talk to anybody, you're looking at a blue line, no matter where you go in your country or the world, like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think from swimming, I built a lot of discipline, like throughout the years of doing it. My parents never pushed me either to do any sport. They would encourage me to try different sports as they did with surf lifesaving, but I didn't choose to do that. But with swimming, it was kind of like, if I wanted to do a term, they would pay for the term for me to do my swimming. And then if I didn't like it halfway through the term, I had to finish the term because that's what I committed to. And at the end of the term, I could have stopped.
Okay.
And so, it was my own decision when it would come to the start of the next term. I'd be like, okay, I could do it.
Yep.
But I would always just have to finish. It's like finishing a job. And so I think that's, that was a really important life skill that my parents probably instilled in me to make sure I followed through to the end, whether I liked it or not. If I committed to it, then, I would have to be disciplined enough to at least get to the end. So swimming definitely created the discipline that I probably had for the rest of my sporting career later on in life.
Yeah, it's important, to learn this skill.
Yes.
Sometimes I observe that kids in a teenage phase, they quit too early. Yeah? And also once they see another sport they want to try, they hop into that immediately, but without finishing what they have committed to in the first place. And it's important skill, yeah. Especially, when you transfer it into work life, then it's also important. If you got a project, you can't stop it in the middle. You need to finish it to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
So when was the switch that you switched from swimming to kayaking?
So I was 15 when I started kayak, and I was kind of dabbling. I was still swimming at the same time, but I was dabbling in a little bit of kayak. And so I started probably the first year. In January when the year that I turned 15. And 6 months after I had started paddling, I had raced a couple of just little regional and local competitions, and kind of figured out that I was okay at the sport generally because a lot of the skills that I had from swimming and surf lifesaving translated quite easily into kayak. There's a lot of upper body strength. I had a lot of fitness because of swimming, and because of the strength, I could, put a bit of power into the water when I was in my kayak. So when I was 16, I made the New Zealand under 18 team for the Australian Youth Olympic Festival.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That early?
Yeah. So I made it that early in a team boat. I didn't make it in a single, so I ended up being in a K4, which is a 4-person boat. It's a K means kayak, 4-person K4.
Okay.
You have K2, so 2-person, and K1.
Yeah.
And so I ended up making this women's K4 team, which we went to Australia. We flew to Sydney. We did all these big camps, obviously, before. So I made the team. 6 months later, we did these big camps, trained together, flew to Australia. We stayed, in the Sydney Olympic Village.
Nice.
There was a big, like Olympic opening and all of, the big fancy things that you see on TV. And then we went and we raced on the Penrith Olympic course, and we got a bronze medal.
Wow. And
after that, I figured out that kayaking actually went to the Olympics, and I was like, holy, this is pretty cool. Like I could get into this. And so that's kind of where my passion and my drive to want to go a bit further in that sport started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. So it was right in the first season then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sure. By swimming, you brought some strength already with you, especially in the shoulder, upper muscles, upper body. And from a training perspective, how much training was necessary in order to make it to the national team?
So I ended up switching quite a lot. So in the mornings, just because it was so cold to be out on the water, and also quite dangerous because when it's dark, you can't see if there's boats on the water, and it can be a bit tricky. So I would continue my swimming training in the morning, and then I would do my kayak in the night.
All right.
But we had quite a few, 4 or 5 day long training camps leading up until the date that we left to race.
Crazy.
Because it was really important to train in the crew boat with your team. So we were given our training programs and everything to prepare ourselves for that. I was the youngest in the team by quite a few years, that everyone else was, around 17, 18 years old. And I was this little 15-year-old that just managed to get in there. And I was by no means the strongest in the team at all. So even being around, those, when I was young, the bigger kids, and watching them and how they, prepared for their racing and stuff. Not that I hadn't seen it before, but it kind of, I guess it sparked a little bit of a fire to want to chase a dream.
Awesome. K4. It takes also a lot of discipline in order to hold the certain kind of rhythm, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you were sitting in the front, or because I could imagine that the person in front makes the pace, right?
Yeah. So I've throughout my career, I've sat in many different seats in the boat, and every seat has a different role.
Yeah.
But generally, everybody needs to know the same role, because if you don't know, what your teammate's doing, it's hard to be able to sink in with them and, maximize all of your pressure into making the boat go fast.
Sure.
So it's good to test out and try all the different seats so that you have an understanding of, how tricky the components of each seat can be. And also that, I think, builds a bit of appreciation for what your teammates are doing for the boat and how they're contributing in different ways as well. So that kind of brings a lot of the, the teamwork and the culture of the boat tight together, because you're relying on each other. Not one person can paddle a 4-person boat to the finish line. You've got to be able to do it together.
Sure. Well, it's a kind of small team sport, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you knew the other girls in the boat beforehand, or you just met?
I knew them, but not well, generally because we were from different parts of New Zealand. Yeah, so, I mean, New Zealand is a small country, but with our sport, there were quite a few different regions that would have clubs and be able to compete. So I would only really see them when I was at national events or at these training camps.
Okay. You mentioned you had, training camps like 4 or 5 days. How was it getting together first time, getting to know each other?
Yeah.
And it could be a kind of adventure, yeah.
Yeah, it was a massive adventure. We would do, aside from the training that would be kind of, set prior to us going to these camps, we would be doing team building activities as well, either before dinner or lunch, or we would do them during the day just to get to know each other and I guess figure out how to communicate as best as we could. Off the water, so it was easier. On the water.
On the water, I mean, during a race, for instance, is it completely quiet in the kayak, or is it also yelling each other and pushing each other?
It's funny, so if I'm looking more at my professional career, towards the end of my career where, I did all of my best races, the team I generally raced in, we wouldn't have to say a word because it was so drilled into us what we were doing, at each meter of the race that we all just knew what we needed to do.
Okay.
So we didn't have to say a word. We practiced it over and over and over again. And every session that we did had a purpose on what area of the race we were working on. So, I think when you get to that level, it's an instinct. You know what to do. Yeah.
How long is the race? I mean, because when I was younger, there was one lady from Germany, Birgit Fischer, I think.
Yes, yeah.
She took part in several Olympics. Yeah. And I think the length was 500 meters, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. It's every time 500 meters or?
Yep. So for women, we have events over 500 and 200 meters. At the Olympics, it's all 500 meters. And men are the same. They have thousands, though, as well. So they have thousands and 500s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the duration on average? Maybe?
Yeah. So the races that I would do, so in the K4, it took us about a minute and a half to race over 500 meters. Okay. So those were the events I would race in. I did race a couple of world championships in a K2 as well. I raced in a K2 200. So that's that's under 40 seconds.
So it's all out then?
Yeah, it's all out. It's major strength base. It's all sprint.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. And so the Youth Olympic Games, they were which year?
So I went to the 2016 Rio Olympics.
Okay. No. I mean the ones which took place in Australia. The first one.
That was in 2006. Gosh, 2005, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah. 2005.
Wow. If I would be a parent, I would focus on sport is nice, but having a kind of certain foundation, professional wise, to have a kind of plan B when, I don't know, because in sports, everything can happen. You can have an injury, you not be qualified or not good enough anymore in order to make it to the team. So after graduation from school, what did you do?
Yeah, I think I did quite a few things.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of sport, it was so important for me, and I probably didn't realize this later on in my career, but for me to actually have something to focus on outside of sport. So it took me away from sport. And not because it was necessarily like a plan B. Yeah, it was good to have a plan B, and you definitely need to have a plan B. But it was more, I would look at it as like a purpose. It's another purpose that you can have in your life rather than just being a kayaker.
Yeah.
And it would kind of help me. It's funny, not necessarily switch off, but it would stop me from overthinking kayak, I would have to be like, okay, I'm going to focus on this today, something completely different rather than 24/7 focusing on kayak, that I'm always focusing on kayak anyway, when you eat, sleep, drink, breathe, everything kayak, because your body needs to be in the best state possible for your races. But it took me away from that by having these things outside of sport. So after college, I went to Auckland University and I did a Bachelor of Science in Marine and Biological Sciences.
Cool.
With the plan of becoming a teacher. So you can do a teaching diploma after your degree and go to secondary schools and teach essentially the courses that you did your undergrad in. So I've done that, and once I made the open team, it got a little bit harder. I finished my undergrad, but it got hard for me to do my postgrad in teaching purely because I was overseas traveling and competing all of the time, and I was unable to be in New Zealand during school terms for placements. So I've kind of switched out a little bit and done quantity surveying, which is pretty much construction management and planning.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
What's the system like in New Zealand? For instance, in Germany, there's a kind of governmental support for athletes who are making it or who are planning in order to make it to the Olympics, in order to support them. How is it in New Zealand, for instance?
Yeah. So you have to have a world ranking and a record, like a ranking on the world stage at your peak event of the year to then receive funding from the government in New Zealand. But it's sport, it's not that much, and depending on where your ranking is, it might be, you can't live off it all the time. So going out and working, when I was still competing, even on the open level, I did part-time work in schools because at this time I still wanted to do some teaching. So I would go into schools and be a teacher aide, and part of that would also be me networking for my life after sport as well. So, I had some connections in schools around Auckland, which was where we were training as well. So that was, something that I was doing. A lot of the stuff comes from sponsorship as well for us to help support ourselves. And that's purely us going out. Like I would actively go out and, try and meet people again, networking. But, also results help with that too. When you don't get results, it's a lot harder.
Sure. So sponsorship means just for you or for the whole K4 team? It
was like some would be for the whole team and some would be like individualized. And, that might be, a friend's company that really wants, to support me on my journey, and I would be wanting to support them as well. So we would have a bit of a chat, figure something out, and, I help you and you help me type thing.
Yeah.
Again, it's not much, but then there's many sports in the world that you can't make, lots of money from. I don't think I was in the sport for that purely. I knew that I would never, be able to, I'd never be able to make $1 million, being a kayaker. I'd have to get into tennis or something like that. But I think it was more for the experience, and I just loved doing what I was doing. I knew that I wouldn't be able to do it forever. Sport for everybody has a shelf life.
Sure.
It doesn't last forever. So I tried to just make the most of it while I was doing it. So I wasn't in it for the money, that's for sure. I just needed enough to be able to support myself and then enjoy the rest.
Sure, of course. So that means when it comes to sponsorships, the label of a sponsor was on the kayak or on your clothes, T-shirts?
It wouldn't have to be on a kayak or clothes or anything. It could be just advertising on social media channels or things like a podcast. Or, I would work in schools as well. So I would always go, maybe do some talks at schools and help other people, other kids, bit of mentoring, that type of thing too. I
mentioned in the introduction that you made it also to the Olympics, to the Rio ones.
Yeah.
Making it to the Youth Olympics, Olympian Championships is also, it's a great achievement. Yeah. So for which Olympics did you qualify?
For the Rio de Janeiro Olympics.
2016.
Yes.
Wow. What was the feeling when because I can imagine that there was a kind of qualification race within New Zealand in order to qualify as a team?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So you go through Firstly, you have to qualify the boat. So the year prior, you have Olympic qualification, which happens at the World Championship. So for countries to go to the Olympics, they have to, place, and it's always different every year, but they say, for example, they might have to get in the top 9
right.
or top, 12, or there's always different rules. So take that for an example. So the year prior, I made the boat, went to the Olympic qualifications, and we managed to qualify the boat, which meant that there was a boat going to the Olympics the following year. But you only qualify the seats. You don't qualify the people that are going. So within the New Zealand kayaking community, we still have to go through another trial process after we've qualified the boat to see who can go to the Olympics, so who gets those seats.
Okay, well, yes. Sounds like pressure.
Yeah, I mean, that's what sport is. There's always pressure. You're always in a pressure cooker. I think it's, how you manage that. And it's not easy, don't get me wrong.
No.
I've had my moments, that's for sure. But I think I learnt over the years how to manage the pressure and lean on the people I needed to help ease it a little bit more.
All right. And in triathlon on a professional level, mental training becomes more and more important, because sometimes, like in short course races, there's no moment where you can relax, And so many athletes, they take the advice or even support by my mental trainers. Was it the same in your case?
Yeah. I think the one difference is, our event was only a minute and a half, where triathlon, it's a lot longer to keep your head in the game. And, we even had a mentor, Hamish Carter. He worked with our crew in 2016 to more with the focus of, where our mindsets were when we were leading into the games. And it was really beneficial having him. And he would always, when it came to racing purely, he would talk about how, he'd get his head into the deepest, darkest hole. And the game he played with himself was how he would be able to pull himself out while he was in that hole during a race. And that's what made him the Olympic champion he was in triathlon. But he also was really beneficial for us, because the 4 girls that were in the crew that did go to the games, we had never been to an Olympics before. We didn't know what to expect. We had no idea about the noise that would be involved with the games. So he kind of talked us through the circus that the Olympic was and what to expect when we got there. But essentially, like at the end of the day, when we line up on the course, we're racing the same crews, the same people generally, unless one person might change or whatever, that we've raced the year before and the year before that. Like it's the same thing. There's just all this signage, there's all this noise, there's all these cameras like around us. So he kind of helped us prepare for that and be ready to try and not completely block it out, because when you're at the games, you want to be able to take it in too, to an extent. But if you needed to block it out, you were ready and you were prepared to do that.
Sure. So what was the feeling like when you knew that that you got the info that you would make the team, the K4, for the Rio Olympics? Party.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I think I called my parents straight away, told them, like I was ecstatic. But then I think in my own head and our team, the job wasn't even finished. It only just started. Like, yeah, I was going to the Olympics, but that wasn't the end goal. Like, we wanted to go to the Olympics and race the best race we could. And we didn't, like, yeah, it's nice to come away with a gold medal, and that's every Olympian's goal, right? Like, that's what you want. But I think if we always focused on that, I think you get too consumed in it and you bypass all the training and the work that you've done and the focus that you need to have each process like in place to perform a good race. So we just stuck to the process. We didn't think about the end result. when we went to the games, we actually performed like amazingly out of our skin. So the year before when we qualified, we were a fresh crew. We'd only been together a year. We'd all been paddling for a long time, but training every day for a year. So just refining the team aspect. We came 9th at the Olympic qualifications. And then a year later when we raced at the games, we were the same crew, we came 5th. So we went from 9th in the world to 5th in the world within the space of 12 months.
Great.
So it was funny. I remember coming off the water in the final and I was like, we were probably the most like excited 5th placing you've ever seen in your life because we were so proud of our performance and what we managed to execute because that's what we went out there to do. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Is there video footage out there on YouTube?
Yeah, there is video footage on YouTube somewhere.
Okay, I'm gonna have a research and then maybe link it in the show notes of this podcast episode. And wow, I mean, when you travel to Rio, because I heard from other triathletes who made it to Sydney Olympics, for instance, or Athens, or London, they were completely, overwhelmed with the whole atmosphere. Yeah. Like living in the Olympic Village, having food 24/7, meeting other great athletes. How was it in your case?
Yeah, I mean, it's this. It is. It's exactly like that. It's crazy. It's out of this world. And like you even, you might be walking down the street, and I think we had Roger Federer like hitting on the tennis court inside the Olympic Village, like with his trainer. Yeah. And all these other athletes are like around the courts just like watching. And so you're kind of like, wow, like this is amazing. But then it's so easy to just get consumed by all of that and not like keep focused on the reason you're there, like you've done all of this work, like you're there for a reason. You want to acknowledge all of that stuff and be like, wow, this is epic, this is cool. And I did, I saw all of those things. We stuck to our plan, which was really cool. Being in the village, it was amazing.
Can imagine, yeah. Well, I heard a lot, like, there was one guy here on the podcast who told me that, he was, lucky him, he qualified 2 times. And because he said that the first time it was a kind of dream and he didn't perform because he was focusing on other stuff. Yeah. As you said, you get distracted, and he realized afterwards that, oh shit, I should have focused more, and rather than joining parties and something like that, or going to some other events. And but in the second time, he was more focused. I mean, it's also a learning, And so great for you that you were focused straight away, because you never know how many chances you get in order to qualify for that, Yeah. So. Great. So you also joined closing ceremony? No,
so we didn't go to the opening ceremony because our event was 2 weeks after the games. So when it comes to, I guess, housing all of the athletes, some athletes, they're at the start of the Olympic schedule. Yeah. They will go to the opening ceremony, race. Rowing was before us. So they raced in the first 2 weeks and we were at the end. So we were after them. So I went to the closing ceremony, which if you're an athlete, it's actually better going to the closing ceremony because everything's done. There's no stress, right. I think it purely as an athlete, you get to enjoy it a little more. I think with the opening ceremony, lots of athletes don't go because they're up to compete early the next day, and it doesn't finish till something like 1 or 2 in the morning. Right. By the time they can get on the bus and get home and stuff. So, we went to the closing one.
Awesome. And you mentioned already the results. You became 5th in the games. But it doesn't start with a final, so you had to go through preliminaries and semifinals and all that stuff.
Yes, yeah. You have your heats and your semis, everything. You kind of go through, and they're all like, alternate days and amongst other races as well. Later on in my career, we managed to race amongst multiple events with only 4 girls and achieve a lot in one world champ. So I think after the Rio Olympics, we raced at World Championships in the Czech Republic the next year. and we managed to get a bronze medal in the K4, so same event, but went from 5th to 3rd.
Great.
And then one of the girls in our team, Lisa Carrington, she's, if you Google her, you'll realise who she is, but she's a incredible athlete, and she's, multiple world titles for K1, so the single, and 500 and 200 meters. She ended up being in our boat that year. One of the girls retired. And from then on, we had a group of girls. There was about between 6 and 8 girls in New Zealand, which was our squad for these boats that we would send away and get these amazing results. And so the year after that, we managed to put a K4, 2 K2s across 500 metres, 200 metres, and then we had K1 events across 500 and 200 metres as well, and got more medals at World Championships.
Wow.
So our team just grew like strength by strength by strength. So it was really, really cool to be a part of that growth and just wanting to like achieve more together, even, with the girls that didn't make the boats and didn't get to travel and race overseas, like they were a part of all of that success, because without them, we wouldn't have been pushing each other to be able to get better or have that like competitive streak within our squad to allow those boats to, I guess, reach the goals they got to.
Sure. Because if you think that, if there are just 4 girls, on the same level, then you know that you're pretty safe in the boat, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
And, but if you don't know, you need to push harder in order to make it to the boat. So you mentioned you went to World Champs in Czech Republic. Where else did you go?
The year after that, we had World Champs in Portugal, where I managed to get 2 silver medals in the K4 and the K2.
Cool.
After that, when we've raced in Hungary as well. Every year there's a circuit event. So we have World Cups. So there's 3 World Cup events which are held throughout Europe. And so we would generally come across to those. They're around May and race at those events. And then around August would be the big World Champs, which is our peak event of the year. So that's like the big event that you really need to and want to perform at.
All right.
So we managed to get quite a bit of race experience, which was really cool.
Wow.
And travel, a lot during that too.
It's a great way to discover the world. And so where did you like racing the most?
Oh, that's a good question. I really enjoyed actually racing in Duisburg, Germany.
Seriously?
Yeah. They've got an amazing course. It's not necessarily the fastest course, but it's really cool because you're in amongst a town. There's a cool recreational park right around the course. It's got a really cool setup. The one in Portugal is really nice as well. Some of the training centres we go to are beautiful. We've trained on the Munich course, 1972 Olympic course.
Yeah.
That's pretty stunning. Milan, we've raced in Milan. Trained a lot in Slovenia. Yeah, all over the place. France,
cool.
We've trained here as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Are there differences when it comes to water or the size of a course and yeah?
Yeah, yep, definitely. There are a lot of it is temperature.
Yeah.
So the warmer the water, the more buoyant the boats can be.
Okay, sure.
So there's no advantage or disadvantage to anybody, but it just means that, some courses can be a little bit faster. It also depends on the weather on the day. So,
sure.
Those faster courses, you might race on them, but you could have a headwind,
right.
Which is also going to slow your times down. So
sure.
Doesn't necessarily mean those courses are always going to be fast.
Yeah.
But hey, if you got those courses on a good day and there was a tailwind, you're going to do a very fast time.
Sure. Yeah, I understand, yeah. I raced Oberschleißheim as well. I mean, the one in Munich, but
yes.
On a triathlon event. There was
cool.
a kind of swim. You started to swim in this course, and then hopped onto the bike, were cycling around.
Yes.
And then you were running around, yeah.
Yeah.
And but also in Duisburg, there's also Ironman 70.3, a middle distance race there.
Oh, cool.
They also swim in the course there.
Yeah.
All
yeah,
right.
I mean, they're perfect courses for...
Sure.
Yeah, because you've got everything you need. You've got a big,
exactly.
long, either course. Some of them are lakes that have courses on them as well, so they're a lot bigger.
Right.
some of them have warm-up lanes, so they might have other lakes or little, alleys next to them that are filled with water that you can go up and down on. So they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
I feel grateful that I ended up falling into a sport. I mean, it's similar to triathlon where I can train in all of these beautiful places all across the world, and it's hard work, don't get me wrong. We'd be doing between 15 16 sessions a week with only 1 day rest every single day of the year.
So kind of full-time job.
Yeah, but the thing that I enjoyed about it, well, in the hard times I would just have to pinch myself and look around and be like, oh my gosh, like I'm training on this beautiful lake or this stunning course in this location. Like I could be, like I said, in a swimming pool looking at the same line anywhere in the world. It's exactly the same, for every single training session. So that was one thing that I would always try and like remind myself of when I was on the water, and just be like, wow, like this is cool. Looking around these mountains, you'd be looking at some courses, the Southern Alps would be in front of you, and you're just like, okay, back to work, but that was cool.
But have also been moments where you were thinking, why the heck am I doing this? Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Not necessarily with the training. I think just, with sports, sometimes there comes anxiety when it gets to trialing, and, the pressure can come on. I had methods of dealing with that, but yeah, when you get into the really tricky spots, you're like, why am I doing this? But I figured out how to really enjoy the training and the process, which is why I think I managed to get as far as I got in kayak. When I was younger, I didn't enjoy, killing myself. I was like, why do I kill myself all the time? Work this hard, like there's no point. But then when I started, I guess, like analyzing things a little more, and week by week being able to see progression, it was really cool to be like, okay, like I averaged 13.5k an hour for 10 times, 500 meters last week. And, I'm progressing to be able to do 13.6 like today. Like, I'm jumping in the water being like, come on. And I'm excited for that stuff. You don't always hit targets or anything, so you kind of make ranges, but I kind of learnt to really enjoy that process, which was cool.
Yeah.
And it was only a moment in time that I would be in pain, I'd get the endorphins of just like either whether I did reach my goals or didn't, like it'd be like, okay, back to the drawing board, reassess, I've got another session in a couple of hours, like what can I do?
Right. So what did a typical training session look like? I mean, maybe I could imagine like in swimming, you warm up for a certain while and then you do sprints all the time, or how was it?
Yeah, it's we did a lot of our training was kind of based on like the Arthur Lydiard training program. So, we would have big base training blocks that we would push through, all like leading up to a point in the year. So we would have big endurance blocks where we would be doing, 3 sessions that were like 20 to 23 Ks on the water a week. And then on top of that, we would have either 3 or 4 gym sessions. One would be a heavy weighted gym session. One would be a little more endurance. And then one would be like, say, speed. And so those would be there in the week. And unless we were doing a strength block, then they would all be huge, like 2-hour long endurance-based gym sessions, and that was the focus for the week. But a typical week would be jump on the water on a Monday morning, do between 10 and 13K, depending on what was on the plan and what block we were in, training block we were in.
Right.
Finish that in L2. Then after that in the morning, we would jump or go to the gym. We would do our heavy weighted gym session, which became a primer for a sprint session on the water in the afternoon. So each, like that would be the focus for a Monday. Tuesday morning, we would have a big, longer endurance. Tuesday morning, we would have a VO2 based sessions. So that would be like we would call them key sessions of the week. So that could be something like 10 to 15 500s, or it could be, 6 to 8,000 meter pieces.
Okay.
With targets that we would have to be reaching for the session. And this is in K1s, by the way. So we would do a lot of our training in singles, not always in a K4, because within the team, we would also be competing in different boats.
Okay.
So we had to base a lot of our training in singles and then convert into
the
crew
four.
boats.
Okay.
And so Thursdays we'd do that. We'd have Pilates during the day, and then we would have an easy recovery float in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. Wednesday would be an endurance day, so you'd do like a 20K plus paddle in the morning, gym after that, and then we got an afternoon off on Wednesdays. And then you would repeat that 3-day cycle again for the second half of the week, and then Sundays off.
Okay, yeah, full-time job. After the 16 Olympics, did you plan to go to Tokyo as well in 2020?
Yes, I did. I did plan that. And we were tracking pretty well for that too. Mm-hmm. But then obviously COVID happened.
Yeah.
And, that threw a spanner in the works for many athletes all over the world.
Sure.
When you've prepped, we were only months away as well from going.
Yeah.
What was it? It was like...
You were qualified already?
Like March or something? Yeah. The boat had qualified, everything was sorted. So, yeah, that was pretty rough to take.
Sure.
And then within that time, lots of things had happened within the team. I mean, it's this, it's a saying for no one was prepared for COVID.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was like over here, but in New Zealand, we weren't even allowed to go on the water and train. We weren't allowed to jump in our boats purely because the government thought it was, it's too dangerous if something happened to us out there, or, you weren't allowed to go boating, like any boat, not just a kayak, like any boat. So it really threw a lot of things into the footwork. We weren't allowed to be together as a team. You weren't able to train with people. You had to stay in your bubble.
Yeah.
So that got a bit tricky to navigate for all of us.
Sure.
And then again, we didn't know what was happening for a long time. Lots of things obviously were happening within the team. People didn't know what they were going to do, whether they were going to stay, go, keep going. And, I was probably one of those people as well. My now husband, he was here in France while I was going through all of this process as well. So I was, by myself. I was living by myself, and I was kind of like, I don't know, we were ready to kind of move on to the next part of our life. And like I said at the start, we know it's got a shelf life as well. And I knew that I had done the best I could as well. And even when I was training, if, I did go to the Tokyo Games the next year, I did train for quite a wee while, and I trained with a team through to selections and stuff. And even when they did go to the games, I still felt like I was part of that team, if that makes sense. Which was part of the culture that we had too, like the successes that they did and had on the world stage. I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, I got to be, maybe your name's not out there or, on the forefront of things, but you in here, like in your chest, you feel like you're part of that success, which is really special.
Sure. I mean, because you were spending a lot of time, before COVID, and also you were in touch during the phase. Even if you didn't make the boat, I can fully understand that you were part of it, yeah, because you were also some kind pushing your other teammates in order to make it into the boat, even if you didn't make it then.
Yeah.
And so how did the boat perform in 2021 in Tokyo? So
they got 4th at the games.
Okay, they improved again.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. And then 2 of the girls that I had raced in for many years prior, they managed to get a gold medal in a K2.
Cool.
Which was really cool. And then Lisa got a gold medal in her K1 500 and her K1 200.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty special to be a part of all of that success. And I still keep in touch with all of them as well. The following year, so my brother actually he made the Tokyo Olympics. He trains extremely hard in the men's program, and he raced in a K2 for the men's, and he managed to get 5th in the 1,000 at the Tokyo Games. And so
Awesome.
he's trialing and training pretty hard to try and make the Paris Games.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's pretty special too.
Keep fingers crossed for your brother.
Yeah.
He's qualified already, or?
They have an Oceania competition, I think what's this month, January, in February.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep fingers crossed there. Let him make it. Because we are living in France, do you plan to go to the Paris Olympics?
Yes, I would love to. So all fingers crossed that, he manages to live his dream again.
Yeah. Well, I could imagine, for sure there are New Zealand commentators who are commentating the sport. Would this be also kind of role you could look yourself in or would be interested in?
I don't know. Maybe, yeah. I know quite a few of the athletes across all of the sports in New Zealand, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I never really thought of that before.
Well, you could for sure. Because you can talk well, you can describe well. You're from the sport, the sport inside out. Would be a perfect fit. Seriously.
Maybe I have to learn some tips from you, Marco.
No. You're doing awesome, honestly. Where are the races? I think they are in Paris directly, because
Yes.
here in Marseille area, there's just the sailing and surfing. No, the surfing
In
takes
Tahiti.
also in Tahiti, right?
Yeah, it's in Paris. It's oh gosh, I don't know how to pronounce it. But if you caught the train from Paris in the direction towards Disneyland,
Yeah.
it's like on that train route, like right next to the train route.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you race there as well on this course?
No, they've only just recently finished it.
Okay.
So they did a test event last year on the course.
Okay. Did you retire from the sport completely, or?
I've retired from racing.
All right.
But I have helped out a little bit. So not last year, the year prior, so is that 2022, I helped the Open team during their World Cup campaign. So that was, I think, a month where we had a training camp in Pisano in Italy, and then went and raced we raced in Poland and Czech Republic.
Okay.
So I helped them with that, and then they had their World Champs later on in the year in August in Canada. So we had 5 weeks training in Toronto, and then we flew across to Halifax where they raced there. So I helped them with that, and then after that I helped the junior and under 23 team with their World Championship build-up and racing in Hungary.
Nice.
Yeah, more just like assistance. They're all pretty like set up with their training plans and their schedules. The coaching is amazing. The coaching in NZ is next level.
Yeah.
Even when you look across all different sports in the world, it's extremely impressive the machine that they have going.
Sure.
And learning, being able to be on the other side of the fence in the staff, and kind of, not that I didn't know it, we always appreciated our staff and everything that they did for us. And, we were involved with a lot of, what would be happening with the program and understanding it. But to be able to be on the other side and kind of have a little bit more involvement with it was really cool. And
Sure.
I don't know whether I might get more involved with it in terms of when we do move back to New Zealand eventually, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. So you could consider maybe becoming a coach as well?
Possibly. I guess it all depends on circumstances of where we end up when we move back to New Zealand with our now family.
Sure. Yeah. And talking about the team, because on TV you just see the crew. Who else is taking care of besides of a coach? Because I could think that there are technicians taking care of a boat, maybe.
Yeah, we have a lot of people. When we would be traveling with between 4 or 5 girls, we would have more staff that would be traveling with us than athletes.
Like physio.
Yeah, so we would have, if I'm talking about just the team necessarily in New Zealand, not that would always travel with us, we would have our doctor, our physios, we would have our strength and conditioning trainer, we would have our Pilates instructor, which was very specialised. Obviously, we would have our coach, assistant coach, manager. We would have a biomechanist that would always travel with us as well. We'd have a physiologist as well that would help with all of the testing and setting training levels, which were individualised for each of the athletes. So we'd have to do lots of tests in the labs for that. We'd have life advisors that would help us as well, sports psychologists.
Wow.
We were very lucky.
Big crew.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of it, to be frank. Wow. Crazy. Biomechanists. So they were observing by video how you sit in the boat and how your body reacts mechanically, or seriously?
Yeah, seriously. That's what they would help us do. So they were very clued into, I guess, like how mechanically we could produce the best force from our paddle into the water to produce speed, the best speed. And where leakage of, the wattage could be coming from our body, depending on how we were sitting in the boat, the ways that we were moving our arms, if our shoulders might have been like slightly in a different angle, or how our wrists were pivoted to the angle of the blade in the water.
Crazy.
So they would help us with all of that stuff. So lots of video. We had a lot of technology on our boats as well that would help with them analysing everything for us.
Crazy. I really wasn't aware of, but because I was thinking that triathlon would be kind of geek sport, but now I learned something new. Wow. You mentioned that you were accompanying the team during the last events. What was the feeling? I mean, not sitting in the boat, but looking at it from the side.
It was pretty cool. I think, you get itchy feet and you want to jump back in the boats. And I mean, I did do a couple of sessions with the girls, but it was really cool to be able to, I think, just even bring all the knowledge that I had back.
Sure.
And just being like, wow, I actually I have so much in here that I could give, to the next generation. Sure. Because there were a few girls in the team, they're a bit younger as well, and they're now actually world champions, which is amazing. The current world champions. So it's cool to, I was helping them the year prior, and it's like, man, that was pretty cool being able to assist, in the smallest way that I could. I know that, it's a much bigger picture than me being there that they're involved in.
But you added some pieces to it.
It's cool.
Awesome. I love it. As you mentioned, you are family now. What do you say when your child comes to you, I don't know, at the age of 12, 13, hey, Mom, I want to do kayaking? Yeah.
I mean, I'd let her give it a go, that's for sure. I think she's going to make those decisions herself.
Sure.
So it'll be very interesting. It's funny at the moment. So I've got an 8-month-old daughter, and
she's lovely.
Yeah, she seems to be more musical than coordinated at the moment.
No, she's super.
So I'm not sure what route she's going to go down. So it'll be interesting. But I think more than anything, as long as she's just got the support she needs, she can choose what she wants to do.
Cool. And all the medals which you earned, they have a special place?
Yeah, well, because I don't live in our house in New Zealand anymore, we've rented it out. It's in a box somewhere.
Okay.
In storage.
I had a recording recently with a runner who became European champion on the 10,000 meters in 2006. And it took place, I think, last week. And he had 2 days later, he had a kind of media coming to his house, and he was still looking for his medal from 2006. And because he also has a child who maybe put it somewhere, but couldn't remember where anymore. So yeah, I hope that he found it in the meantime. But
Oh, that's funny.
it is.
Yeah, that's hard. Once the kids come around, you got to hide everything.
Yeah. So when you look back onto the sports career, what kind of learnings did you took out of it, and which you can take into the professional career in the future, maybe?
There's many things that I've probably learned in my sporting career.
Well, discipline for sure.
Yeah, discipline. I think like dealing with pressure is a big one. I think confidence also, like knowing that you can achieve your goals, like if you're sticking to something, even if you don't, like, like I said before, I've come out of this and I have all this knowledge like up here, and I'm like, well, I started it with nothing. I had no idea. And so regardless of where I end up, even in any professional career, I'm like, well, I know that I'm able to learn, like I can do it. Like, so the confidence probably in myself is something that I've learned from sport.
Right.
Working with people, like being able to get the most out of people, not because of their differences, but because of like their strengths that I don't have, if that makes sense. Like, when we were working in a team, we kind of had a little motto. It was kind of like, we don't all have to be the same fruit. Like we could be a smoothie. Like mix it all together. Like we need to make the most out of this. If one of us isn't so good at one thing, but someone else is, it's kind of like, let's lean on each other.
Yep.
Like, so the teamwork concept of that, like definitely took that out of my sporting career as well.
All right.
You don't want to be the smartest person in the room. That's for sure. If you're that way, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Just want to keep learning.
Sure.
Forever learning. That's the most important.
Well, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just another question when it comes to races. I mean, because I could imagine that the start in a kayak race, 500 meters or 200 meters, is pretty important. Is there also kind of, because when you compete on an international level, you compete against other national teams. Are there always friendships, or also sometimes kind of like mind games coming up front in order to intimidate the other competitors?
I don't know if there's necessarily mind games. I think more than anything, there was good friendships between all the athletes. I mean, the ones that I knew anyway.
Yeah.
It's also, I mean, it can be hard too because of the language barrier between different countries. So
Sure.
you'd generally be able to make good friendships with the ones that could speak your own language.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never had any bad vibes from anyone, which was nice.
Yeah, because in swimming sometimes it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Yeah. Like I remember a scene. I think it was also 2016 when Michael Phelps got into Jet Leclerc.
Yeah.
And so when Chet was kind of provoking Michael, even I experienced that there. And it was more kind of on a national level. The first time it happened, I was really astonished, and then it got funnier.
Yeah.
I mean, you learn from it
Yeah.
for sure. So there are still friendships existing.
Yeah. Especially like being over here in Europe, a few of the paddlers, a few of them have retired as well. They'll still reach out and contact, if they're either nearby in the area I'm in or vice versa, which is really cool.
And paddle together?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So you have your own board?
Well, normally you'd try and find a boat, like a local one hanging around. I've got my own paddle here, so
okay. Nice.
Take that with me.
And I can imagine that, when you had such a long career, it's hard to stop, right? I mean, to stop sports in general, because you know that exercising is pretty good for the body.
Yeah. I have tried to keep my exercise up as much as possible. I've got a little bit of a back injury, so I'm just working through that at the moment. But I think the hardest thing when you do eventually retire from sport is probably like the change of identity. Because, I think especially when you've been doing well, like on the world stage, there's a lot of hype around you and noise. And then when that all kind of disappears, when you retire, in all honesty, you do feel a little bit lost for a wee while until you kind of find your feet and just be like, okay, like I'm more than just a kayaker. Like, remember that, like, there's more to me than sport.
Sure.
But I think when you come from the top level and that is your lifestyle for, 10 plus years, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, it's hard to not let go. It's hard to switch.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, but I guess it's, it was a learning process, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How long did it take to learn that?
Probably took me about a year. Yeah.
Can imagine,
It
yeah.
took me about a year.
Yeah, because as you said, training so much and you're taking part in competitions in Olympics and you identify with it. But I mean, lucky you put also some effort into education in order to have something afterwards, to hop into.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, you have family, you have a kid, and I think that's also pretty supportive, I would say, in order to give you a new direction, yeah?
Yeah.
Because you're responsible for somebody else.
Yeah, it's freaky when you say that, isn't it? I'm responsible for another human. I am.
It's a learning process.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me a while. I mean, when we got the message that we would be parents with the first kid, I was completely afraid of, in the first days. But after a while, I got used to it.
Yeah.
And once the kid is born, well, you need to be there.
Yeah, you do.
And but it's a learning process, and it's constant learning. I mean, my kids, they are older now, and how do you say, bigger kids, bigger problems? Yeah.
Oh, don't tell me that.
No.
Things to look forward to.
Well, it's a way how you approach it, and mentally as well. Yeah. And wow, thank you very much for sharing your stories, all the experience which you made, the learnings. Yeah, I hope that your back injury gets well, and that you recover quickly and get well soon. Yeah. Could you think about maybe joining a triathlon in the future one day?
Possibly. Let me recover first, and then I definitely want to get back into some more serious type of exercise.
Because you can swim for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a bike. I don't know.
I might be able to find one.
Yeah. You can run. You run from time to time, maybe.
I wouldn't say it's my strength, but I'll try.
Yeah. In the end, it's all about having fun. Yeah. And it's not about. Okay, maybe. Well, in your case, it's maybe different because when you take part, you want to compete and give your best. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, in my case, I'm a bit older, so it's just about finishing and experiencing it.
Yeah.
And but okay, sometimes when I'm racing in Germany, it's different because then I want to compete on a good level. Here in France, it's more leisure thing. Because also the French, which I mean, in the races I've been, the French, they are also taking it easy.
Yeah.
It's more about being part and taking part in.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and wish you all the best for the injury, that it gets well soon, and best of luck for the future. Maybe one day you make it to the Olympics as a coach or commentator. You never know.
Thank you very much for having me.
Sure. All the best. Bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode. All the respective links, as I mentioned before, I put it into the show notes of this episode. And if you don't want to miss any further episodes of Triathlon Podcasts, simply subscribe to the podcast in respective players like Apple Podcast or others. All right. So then thank you for tuning in, and I wish you a great time until the next episode. Cheers, Marco.